Hello, my name is Zeke. I am doing a film review of The Lives of Others, directed by Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck. I'm sorry if I messed that name up. Basically, my analysis is going to explore the historical context of the film, the cultural significance and the significance to the film today, and just my own personal reflection or the reaction to the film. So let's get started. So let's start with the historical context. The film takes place in East Berlin during the time that Germany was separated into different occupational zones, and effectively two German states. So that was right after World War II. West Berlin was a capitalist and more free state, and East Berlin was allied with the Soviet Union and was, in that way, obviously a communist controlled government that went by the name of the German Democratic Republic. So you'll see in this photo that there's basically two sides. This is a wall that's splitting up Berlin, and on the west side you can see like the murals on the wall, the sidewalk, the nice lamppost. It's well maintained. People enjoy it. And on the other side, it was a heavily guarded um, area that citizens could not go to because uh, East Germans were fleeing from the state. Um, Anyways, part of this GDR, the German Democratic Republic, was of the Ministry of State Security of East Germany, which is also known as the Stasi. So this was a governing body that basically just conducted mass surveillance on its citizens. It did foreign espionage and it employed secret police to maintain political and social control. They were a highly feared group of people because of how overpowering they could be. Um, Everyone knew what they were capable of, but they ran their operations secretly and so dominantly that there was no way of citizens protecting themselves. If you'd like to know more about it, this article does talk about it, and it talks about the importance of knowing the history of the Stasi and who they were and how to stop governments from being so totalitarian in the future. Um, Anyways, more about the film. So, The Lives of Others was a film about a secret agent who was assigned to conduct surveillance on a citizen, the citizen was a playwright, that leaders of the German Democratic Republic were suspicious of. Basically, he had just made himself as an enemy. The ministry wiretapped that writer's home, and the Agent Wiesler was his name, listened to him for months, trying to find proof that the playwright was critical of the government and thus an enemy of the state. After a long period of time, the writer eventually did show that he, in fact, was critical of the state, but the agent at that point had a change of heart and falsified records and reports of the events in order to protect the writer. The Lives of Others, the film, opened up with an interrogation by Agent Wiesler while he was still loyal to the Stasi. And in this opening scene, the film was basically pretty quick to label the Stasi as an evil, overpowering institution through its use of lighting and camera angles, which I write about a little bit here. There's also this film review that I found on YouTube that dives into that a little bit deeper, but I just want to show you that opening shot. This is the hallway, so we have a guard taking a citizen who is being interrogated to the interrogation room. You'll quickly see that this dim lighting where it's more lit up in the background but it's dark in the front, it kind of shows it's an evil place to be. They're walking down a really long hallway. That's how that lighting makes that effect. And it just kind of throughout this review, you can see more scenes of the camera angles showing Agent Wiesler being this overbearing, very powerful, and just straight up evil person, or at least that's the way I took it. Anyways, we can get a little bit more into the cultural significance of this. So The most critical issue that the Lies of Others brings to light is the use of mass surveillance by a governing body. Um, Whenever people talk about mass surveillance, one of the first names to come up is Edward Snowden, because of his role in revealing a classified US program in which the NSA spies on American citizens. And let's watch this little clip to kind of talk about that a little bit more.
Hi, my name is Edward Snowden. I go by Ed.
In 2013, I didn't know who Edward Snowden was. I had no idea he would become the whistleblower responsible for the biggest leak of top secret documents in history. Not long after, Hollywood came calling.
This is everything I have. They're gonna figure out what I've done.
Did you access an unauthorized program?
Anyways, if you'd like to watch more of that, this is the link to that video. Edward Snowden, he is now a pretty big political figure, and he's a pretty contentious figure too, about whether or not you feel like he was right in revealing all these classified documents that might have put the US at risk, or if you think that it was his moral duty to reveal those documents because people needed to know about this surveillance that the NSA was conducting, and he felt that it was unconstitutional, so he took it upon himself to reveal that. There's still a lot of debate around it, but it seems to be that there's a growing acceptance for his actions. He even recently shared himself that he believes that he will eventually. So he is currently in Russia because he fears that if he returns to the United States, he will be imprisoned and not given a fair trial because of his actions. And so he says that he will return to the US if he's guaranteed a fair trial. And he does seem to believe that that will happen because, reading from this tweet, the man who oversaw the top secret investigation into my work in exposing the NSA's unconstitutional system of mass surveillance now believes we are in a better place because I came forward. He disputes the methods, but admits it was net good. He thinks he'll be home. So I thought this was interesting because the film clearly portrays Agent Weisler as a hero for protecting this writer and doing everything that he did in the film. And so it makes me wonder if the filmmakers, or if Donnersmarck himself, I'm sorry if I'm doing his last name wrong, would kind of think of Snowden in the same way as this hero for kind of working against this governing body that is conducting mass surveillance against its people. But you could argue that while both are individuals who were involved in the institutions and then went against it, Agent Weisler's actions were potentially a more emotionally charged or individually driven than Snowden, who appears to have acted out of the interests of American people. However, some people do argue that Snowden was acting as someone who just wants to be famous. Anyways, let's move on to my personal reflection. So, personally, I really enjoyed the film. The plot was complex, but the story was made very simple by the director and the film techniques that he used. I think the film had two goals. First, to tell the story of Agent Weisler, and in doing so, who the Stasi were and what they did. And second, to express the dangers of a totalitarian government and the damage that mass surveillance specifically can have. When we kind of talk about that more, I'll admit that I used to not be very afraid of like the government or the NSA or really anybody spying on me or tracking my data, but the film makes a good argument about the dangers that this mass surveillance can have on innocent people who don't do anything wrong or nothing illegal, just because of how the leaders of such a system can abuse its powers. And I thought this tweet was interesting because it's kind of referencing how the U.S. Outside of the NSA is willing to consider monitoring people just for the sake of safety. But we question how much monitoring is actually helpful to our our safety and how much is just unconstitutional, by Edward Snowden's words. And this discussion becomes even more important and more prevalent as technology advances. So today we have Google Homes, we have Amazon Echoes, we have our smartphones that are constantly listening to our conversations, and that data is being spit out into computers, and it's writing everything down we say and figuring out what it means and why it's important for Google to know those. And for a long time, people didn't think it was too dangerous because it's just data, it's just a computer. But recently there is this article about how companies using these technologies are actually having employees who can listen to the actual conversations that we are having, which is completely different than a computer analyzing the words that are said. And it brings up questions about what if that data is leaked? What if anybody can handle the conversation I had with my mom the other night at dinner, right? And if you combine that data with artificial intelligence, there's no question, there's no knowing what kind of personal data can get out there about me and my information. And I thought this Instagram post was pretty revealing of what a lot of people think about this issue. So people in the 60s, so kind of almost during this time of when this movie took place, people would say, I better not say that or the government will wiretap my house. Except now, people are actively going out and purchasing these quote-unquote wiretaps, and they're asking them, do you have a recipe for pancakes? So I agree with this. I do think it's pretty funny. Anyways, I just want to talk a little bit more about one of the elements that made me really enjoy this film. I mentioned that the plot was complex, but the story was made simple because it was executed effectively, and part of that was the use of audio and audio bridges. Something that they did in the movie was a scene would kind of jump back and forth between the playwriter's apartment and what he was doing in it, and Whistler himself in basically the attic of that apartment, listening to what the playwright was doing. And throughout the film, as these scenes were jumping back and forth between those two settings, audio would continue. So conversations would continue on both ends of the scene, and it kind of made it easy to flow and understand where Whistler was, what was happening in the moment, and it actually added to some comical elements of the film too. So at one point, the playwright was celebrating and opened a bottle of champagne. The cork flew into the wall, made a really loud noise because that's where the microphone was that Whistler was listening through. Made a really loud noise. Whistler jumps back. He's surprised because he doesn't know the champagne is there, obviously, because he can't hear it. And it made for a comical moment in the movie that I appreciated. But yeah, in general, these important film techniques, in combination with this compelling story and just this discussion of this important issue of mass surveillance, made for a very entertaining cinema, and I appreciated that.